an error message.
The video is disconnected. I think
But we're going to continue on because it looks like it's recording what I'm saying, but it may not be recording our PowerPoint, but we'll figure that out later. That's all for participating. And we're having some questions about whether you should dial into here or should the sound be coming through the computer. Up here, you're going to have to dial in from your telephone. If you're not able to hear through your computer, please use the dial-in feature and watch the PowerPoints on the slide and hear what we're saying through your telephone. Okay. We have several individuals in our room today that are participating in this webinar, and as you know, this webinar is on the documentation requirements for homemaker, adult companion, and respite care. Presenters include myself, Connie Parker with DAS, Nikita Buchanan with our QA section in DAAS, and Denise Kendrick with the Office of Medicaid Inspector General. In the room, we also have Denise Burton with our QA section, Stephanie Blocker with our HCBS section, Glenda Higgs with Medicaid, and Rachel Verge with Medicaid also. As we cover the information, we will have time for questions and answers. Please use your chat feature to send us questions that we will then answer. First of all, I want to share with you just some background information about this particular issue. In 2012, the Division of Legislative Audit conducted an audit of ElderChoices. The Division of Legislative Audit reviewed recipients of ElderChoices and reviewed 25 recipients of ElderChoices and concluded that 16 cases, or 64%, lacked some form of documentation to support the services billed during the year. The cost of the review for ElderChoices was $246,568. And the services that were problematic were the homemaker, the adult companion, and respite care. The legislative audit followed the ElderChoices Medicaid Policy Manual on the regulations regarding documentation requirements. And here is the link for where the ElderChoices Medicaid Policy Manual can be found. I'm going to turn it over to Nikisha, who is going to talk about the specifics in the Medicaid manual regarding these services.
Okay, the first service that we're going to talk about is homemaker services. It is in your ElderChoices Medicaid policies under section 213.210. This was effective as of 1/1/2013. Home services provide the basic upkeep and management of the home and household assistance, such as menu planning, meal preparation, laundry, essential shopping and errands, and simple household tasks. The tasks may include, but they're not limited to, washing the windows, cleaning ceiling fans and light fixtures, cleaning the refrigerator, and washing inside walls. For oriented personal care tasks, they are not included as a part of this service. Homemaker services must be provided in accordance with the beneficiary ElderChoices written plan of care. A brief description of the services provided, including the signature and title of the person rendering the service. It has to be documented in the beneficiary's case record. We're going to go over section 214.000 in a minute for additional information. One of service is equal to 15 minutes, and for the homemaker services, they're limited to a maximum of 4 hours or 16 units per day, and per month, 43 hours or 172 units.
There's a sign in from home. On next.
Respite care, section 213.700, effective January 1 of 2013. Respite care services provide temporary relief to persons providing long-term care for beneficiaries in their homes. It may be provided outside of the beneficiary's home to meet an emergency need or to schedule relief periods in accordance with the regular caregiver's need for temporary relief from the continuous caregiving. For adult companion, 213.800, also effective January 2013. Adult companion services include non-medical care, supervision, and socialization services related to a functionally impaired adult. These companions assist or supervise this individual with certain tasks, such as preparation, laundry, and shopping, but they do not perform these activities as discrete services. The companion services do not entail hands-on nursing care. Providers also perform light housekeeping tasks, which are incidental to the care and supervision of the individual. This service is provided in accordance with a therapeutic goal in the care and is not diversionary in nature. When required, in accordance with the therapeutic goal is in the plan of care. A company who meets state standards for providing assistance with eating, dressing, and personal hygiene may provide these services when they are essential to the health and welfare of the individual in the absence of the individual's family. We note that union services must be furnished outside of the time frame of any other waiver services and the state plan personal care.
I want to interject here. We were trying to reply to some of the technical questions that are being posed by respondents on the keyboard, and that was the clacking noises a lot of you were hearing. We're not going to respond to any more of your chatting with the keyboard because then it interferes with what you're able to hear. In regards to the question about getting a hard copy of these slides, we will send those out after the webinar. And now we're going to pick back up with the next slide.
This is Stephanie Blocker. There's a question on the screen, or a request to define discrete services. And discrete services means that those aren't separate and individual. Those are tasks that can be done while the aide is in the home to perform the adult companion services. But it's billed under adult companion. It's not billed as meal prep. It's not billed as homemaker or any other service. It is one package, not a separate service.
Now we have documentation requirements. Section 214.000, effective January 2013. ElderChoices providers must develop and maintain sufficient written documentation to support each service for which billing is being made. It's minimum a copy of the beneficiary's plan of care, a description of the services provided, the SIP and title of the individual rendering the services, and the date and actual time the service was rendered. If one category is provided on the same date of service, such as homemaker, personal care, and respite, your documentation must specifically delineate items A through D for each service billed. It's for audit purposes, the auditor must readily be able to discern which service was billed in a particular time period based upon your supporting documentation for that particular billing. Your failure to maintain sufficient documentation to support your billing may result in recoupment of Medicaid payments. Now we're going to turn it over to Denise Kendrick with the Office of Medicaid Inspector General Program Integrity.
Good afternoon, and we appreciate the listeners on the phone. I'm Denise Kendrick with the Medicaid Inspector General's Office, still Program Integrity. Just a brief note on that, on July 1st of this year, the Program Integrity function was continued, but under a different state agency, which was a newly created state agency, that being the Medicaid Inspector General. And so function remains the same. We do have different administration, but there's nothing different about the Program Integrity except for what went into the law, and that would be Act 1499 that was once Senate Bill 914, I believe. So if we can go to the next slide. The role and function of the Program Integrity Unit is found in 110.700, Section 1 of the Provider Manual that you probably all have. The authority falls under federal regulations which require the implementation of the state surveillance and utilization control program that is in place to safeguard against any unnecessary or inappropriate utilization of care or services and excess reimbursements by the Medicaid program. The unit is to ensure compliance within the Arkansas Medicaid program. And this is found, if you would like to look, under Title 19 of the Social Security Act, and it gives you 42 CFR Section 455 of the Arkansas State Plan. Continuing on, the role and function of the Program Integrity Unit is to verify the nature and extent of the services that were reimbursed by the Medicaid program, while ensuring that the reimbursements made were consistent with quality care being provided, and also protecting the integrity of both the state and the federal funds. As you all are probably aware, we get about, it's over 70% of the Medicaid dollars are federal funds. So the responsibilities of the unit include the following. We verify that medical services meet an accepted standard of care and are rendered as billed. We verify that the services are provided by qualified providers, eligible beneficiaries, which is very important in the programs that we're talking about today, qualified providers and eligible beneficiaries. And then also we verify that reimbursement for services is correct and that all funds identified to Medicaid reimbursement are pursued. And that be if someone had an additional payer source, Medicaid is always the payer of last resort. We are responsible for conducting the on-site medical reviews for the purpose of verifying these above tasks we've already spoken of.
and also record keeping and other specified information. Providers selected for on-site reviews will not be notified in advance. The analyst from Program Integrity may request additional information of the patient's medical records regarding the provider's medical practice, policies and things of nature, provider policies, their own policies. Additionally, the PI section is responsible for identification and recoupment of question costs that are claimed for reimbursement from Medicaid funds. As you all know, we do our reviews on the retrospectively, so the provider has already delivered the services, billed the services, and paid for the services, and do our review on the tail end of that. The main purpose of our webinar today is to discuss these three programs, under ElderChoice, Homemaker, Respite, and Adult Companion. I believe it was a request of some providers about some specific documentation. So, Section 214.000 has already been addressed by Nikisha, and I'm not going to with that again, but you can see that on the left side of your slide there on the screen. If we just go down to ABCD there on the left, a copy of this is the things that we look for on an audit. A copy of the beneficiary's plan of care, current, a brief description of the specific service provided, the and title of the individual rendering the service, and the date and actual time the services was rendered. If you refer to page, to the right side, there's Homemaker Services, Respite, and Adult Companion. And you see that the first several bullet points on each one of those is exactly the same. Respite, the difference is the last bullet point, which talks about the documentation of caregiver relief. And that is comes from being an audit what respite care was designed for. And you all have received a PIM from Aging by Ms. Stephanie Walker back in June of 2011. That's about the documentation required for caregiver relief under respite care. That is that the respite is not only intermittent to relieve caregiver, but their documentation needs to show what the caregiver was being relieved of by, family member was being relieved of by the provider. So that may be that the caregiver of the patient was, and caregiver I'm talking about family member, someone who lives there with the patient and takes care of them, not the paid caregiver, that's the provider. Let's say the wife of the patient goes to church every Sunday morning from 9 to 11:30 in respite care. And we would find that in the chart that's why the respite care is being delivered. Someone who works outside the home from 8 to 12 every day, and so as long as the documentation is present to show that that's why these scheduled services for respite are there, then that would probably be acceptable. And of course, this is a case-by-case basis that we would review. Just be sure documentation is there. Would it be helpful if I gave them that number? Yeah. Okay. The PIM number with this, the log number is PIM-11-05. If you'd like to look that up, it's.
And we'll send that out with the piece on this PowerPoint so that you'll both to reference.
All right. Now, the other issue I want to talk about on this that's specific is the lack of specificity in documentation. And what it means is sometimes the provider is using the same form to document several services. And the services are not to be determined on the document. Let's say the individual beneficiary gets 2 hours of Homemaker, 2 hours of Respite, 2 hours of Adult Companion. And so the 6-hour period, the provider would document that they were there for 6 hours, but and just check marks or something in a box on a sheet, we don't know how many of those hours were which service. So be specific that from 8 to 10, homemaker was being provided. From to 12, respite was being provided. From 12 to 2, adult companion. And of course, that's just an example that I'm giving you. Give just 1 minute to respond to a text question here. The question is that documentation on a daily basis for each occurrence? Do you understand the question that they're asking?
When they go to church, the reason why they...
Okay, yes. So if I understand the question correctly, is that documentation, is that documentation on a daily basis for each occurrence? That would be yes. If Ms. Johnson is going to church every Sunday morning, then someone to document that they're there to relieve Ms. Johnson of her caregiver duties while she has gone to church on Sunday morning. I think your question. If not, you can let us know. It's not just a one-time documentation to blanketly cover several instances of service. It was. Oh, great. We answered your questions. Thank you. Y'all have to be with us. We're trying to read and present all at the same time. Okay, so that's on specificity. Then we've had several folks send in examples of their documentation, the sheets that they had. We don't ever endorse anybody's, form that they use. We'll be glad to help you with saying, this looks like we'll be able to delineate what service is being delivered. But we of course would never endorse anyone's particular that they want to document on. Another question we have here is, does the primary caregiver have to be out of the home during scheduled respite? Available. They need to be unavailable. Could be mowing the yard, doing some things around the home that need to be done. And again, that's going to be a case-by-case basis. Obviously, there'd be no way to list everything that may or may not be allowed. But if that caregiver, the family member, is doing something, of necessary away from provide care to the beneficiary, then yes, that would be a possibility that they are not actually out of the home. They might be in the other room doing some, just ask us a case-by-case basis, I guess. Again, what all someone would need to be doing away from the patient, but there are plenty of those tasks. Does anyone else have a comment on that in the room?
Oh, I just have an example.
Okay.
This is Stephanie. I'm thinking maybe you have an individual who has dementia and requires 24/7 supervision, and perhaps you're getting ready for a yard sale. You can't go to your house, gather your items, price your items, that type of thing, and be in and out and provide that 24/7 supervision. So just think like that, but your documentation needs to be clear what the person's needs are, who needs relief, and why.
Thank you, Stephanie. I can barely see that screen. What does it say? We're going to take a minute to answer a question here. It's a little lengthy. If you'll let me read it just a minute. That is in reference to respite care services, yes.
It's like a routine occurrence out of the home every Sunday.
Yeah, it looks like the question is, so instead of documenting once in the chart that the reason they have scheduled respite is because the caregiver is always out of the home on Sundays from 8 to 12, but we need to document this on each occurrence every Sunday. Yes. That is correct. I believe that was someone, Mr. Mail, that was correct. Every Sunday you need to document that in the note. Okay, remember, I think that's part of my, that's not my slide.
All right. This is Connie again. This last slide is just a reminder, and again, it's pulled straight from the Medicaid manual. And this is what you need to keep in your mind always, is that the auditor must readily be able to discern which service was billed in a particular time period based upon supporting documentation for that particular billing. Because what the auditors are going to do is they're going to pull what is billed in the MIS, what's in MMIS is billable services, and then they're going to look at your documentation for that billable service. And if they see that you have billed for adult companion services on a specific date. Fully expect to be able to see from your chart documentation that there is documentation to support that which was billed. Again, a provider's failure to maintain sufficient documentation to support the billing practices may result in recoupment of Medicaid payment.
A program integrity standpoint, this is Denise again with the Office of Medicaid Inspector General. Just to reiterate on what Connie just said, that is exactly, they do QA audits upstairs in that department. Also, we do the same. We do audit, we communicate between the departments. We also go over, policy. We try to audit alike. The policy is what the policy says it is. That is what we audit against. So when we are auditing, we take the billing, of course, the service to billing, compare that to the policy, and if the documentation is there to support what was billed, then absolutely everything and dandy. If it's not, then that may be subject to recoupment from the provider. The question from Ray, on Respite, can we keep a log in the patient's chart of the scheduled respite? Why instead of on the flow sheet? Example, patient has services Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, and the family works out of the home. We see on an individual basis for data service what the caregiver was being relieved of. I hope that's your question.
This is Connie. If any of you, want us to look at the documentation timesheets that you are using, we'll be glad to do that. I have to say that even though we may look at a timesheet and identify some problems with it and tell you what those problems are, that we might not catch all of those problems, and auditors' eyes are sometimes different than ours. And no, we can't give you a sample because we can't endorse any particular timesheet. I would be glad to look at what you're currently using and give you some suggestions for how it can be improved. You can send those either to me by email, and my email right there, and I'll get them to the appropriate person for review, and we'll get back with you. And some of you have already been doing that, sending us your sheets for us to take a look at.
I entertain more questions if anyone has some more questions. It appears we've had over 100 participants today, which is what a really great turnout, although no one really turned out, but Bishop, I guess. So that was a welcome audience.
I want to apologize for any kind of technical difficulties. And here we have another question coming in. Take clients to a doctor on adult companion time, and that's not allowable service under adult companion. The points that was just brought up to me by another person in this room, Ruth, Mary Parker joined us, and after we had done introductions, But one of the things that's so important for y'all with your the sheets or documentation forms that you use is making sure that you adequately train your employees on completion of those timesheets. So you could end up having an excellent timesheet, but if individuals don't understand how to complete them accurately, it's going to help you. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of the documentation, timesheets, and forms that you use.
Okay, this is Stephanie Blocker. We have a question about which service, well, it's difficult to read from the screen when you have vision like mine, but we took the question about you can take the client to the doctor under adult companion services, and the next question came in and says, what service can we? It's not out under any of the waiver services to transport the client to the physician's office. We have the non-emergency medical transportation for that service. And yes, there's the next question, can caregivers ride the Medicaid transport to the MD appointments with the client? I don't know. That's up to the contractor. You would have to ask them. I think that would be availability of space. You just have to ask the contractor. Talking about the attendant caregiver, not the primary caregiver. I'm sorry, I was reading that as someone who lives in the home with the client. No, there's not anything under the service that allows for billable hours of accompanying someone to the doctor's office. Yeah, this is one. Shopping is an allowable service under homemaker, but it varies from agency to agency whether or not they allow the attendants to transport the clients.
I think the question is, sometimes use a doctor that is not a Medicaid provider, so the transportation and will take them. I think they meant to say will not take them. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so she just corrected that. What do you suggest in this situation? What about the AAAs? Okay. Trying to answer this question.
Just have to research that and get back to you.
I think, would you mind if we defer to you? We're going to Ms. Higgs, that's with policy, and she's with me. So we're going to defer her, but our understanding is that, we'll let Ms. Higgs answer. Oh, I'm sorry. They want to know what would we suggest in this situation, and all we're going to suggest is that if it's not a Medicaid provider, the non-emergency transport, they're not eligible for that transport. The question is, what do we suggest on how to get them to the doctor that's not a Medicaid provider? There's not anything that we have that we cover that would be billable to cover to get them to that appointment. that's gonna be outside of any services that
family member.
that Medicaid offers, which would, that would be kind of up to them. It would be kind of an autonomous thing that they're gonna have to do there.
And I would say work with the case manager, because they may know of local churches or organizations that volunteer their time to do these types of activities.
And they can't ride with the patient and caregiver to MD on respite care to assist. Well, let's think about that. Respite care, they're supposed to be doing what? Relieving? I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Am I on question?
No,
Okay.
you're-
On respite, there's the caregiver, the person is supposed to be relieving the caregiver. In that instance, they're not relieving the caregiver. So, focus on relieving the caregiver when you're talking about respite. So I've been trying real hard to hear the speaker, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm sure we'll be providing this webinar again in the future. We'll be glad to if you would contact Parker at that email address. We'll give you the slides, and of course you've got our contact information. You can call or email any questions you've got. We do apologize for that.
And again, we will be posting the recording of this webinar on our website as soon as we get in a proper format for that. Hang on, we're taking a look at this next question that's been posted, and we'll let you know that. Just patient a minute. There was a question, this is Connie, there was a question about the title the individual uses following their signature on their paperwork. And that is basically whatever your title is for that individual. If your title for them is aide, then they would use aide. If it's CNA, then they would use CNA. So it's your title for that individual. We've got another question.
This is why are they allowing hours in monthly increments now and not just weekly hours? This causes a lot of our clients to get over their week. Okay. What we found on QA reviews was that underutilization was occurring when we entered the weekly amounts on the plans. If it might say 10 hours a week, minimum frequency 5 days per week. And if for some reason they didn't provide service, that's a finding on a QA as far as underutilization. So to be flexible and allow you as the agency flexibility with the scheduling, we put a monthly amount, monthly cap on those hours and a minimum frequency so that you can work with your staff's hours and what those clients' needs are and try to provide services as flexible as possible, and then not having the underutilization or overutilization problems.
Be quiet just to see if we were going to have any more questions. And I'm not seeing any more questions being populated at this point in time. Oh, here comes another one.
The question is, at the end of each month, my client not getting their full week's worth of hours because of this. Is there a way to fix it? Well, it's up to you and your agency how you schedule. I mean, there's a maximum monthly amount of hours. If you look at days in the week at the calendar, you can so many hours per day. as long as you don't exceed that maximum cap and you are also following the minimum frequency per week. So I think with your scheduling, you should be able to look at that and make sure that they're getting the max hours.
If, Catherine, that doesn't fully help you with that, this is Connie, might need to take this offline and look at some examples of what you're talking about. And you can email that to me.
This is Denise, and I think, Catherine, some of what you're saying, you would also, if this is consistent with an individual client, you could also get with the HCBS RN and work with them on maybe trying to change the hours.
That's a good point. We need to see, reasoning behind that first, why they're not using their hours. I would recommend changing it until we know the underlying. I mean, yes, it's
just
right. It is.
With them.
It is, but see why with the cause first.
Mm-hmm. Well, consistency.
Yeah, consistency, right.
That there's an issue.
Okay.
Week, month.
I think we're going to end the webinar at this point. This is Connie again. And again, we thank y'all all for being with us in this first effort of having a webinar. And we hope to use this type of venue again for some other areas in our HCBS programs. So be on the lookout for additional notices. And after you exit, you should get a pop-up window to complete a short evaluation. It will help us in planning future webinars. And again, please email me if you have any questions following the webinar, if we can do anything to assist. And thank you so much. And have a great day, everyone.